Hello everyone, I'm Forrest McFreelava, and this is Ethics of Victoria 2, number 3A. This is our pragmatic campaign going on in 1870. We are at war with the Mexicans in order to go ahead and take Nuevo Leon, and we are also just generally trying to colonize. We're going to have to do quite a bit all at once. And honestly, it's been a little bit longer in between, I guess, sessions of this than I would have liked. That's honestly just my bad. I wouldn't say been neglecting this, it's just suddenly we're now up to 4 different campaigns more or less happening simultaneously, which in a way is kind of good because I think one of the big issues with me making recordings and actually sticking through with them has been I don't want to get too far ahead of the videos, so I would occasionally just make a campaign and not record it, and then that kind of spread. We'll go ahead and just keep giving people residency. Limited citizenship probably would have been a better option, but we'll just give people residency for right now. And we'll move forward and try to just win the war as quickly as possible. We have a decent amount of colonial power. Hopefully we'll get a little bit more when we take over this state with its coastline. And I don't imagine the Mexicans are going to put up too fierce of a resistance. So far their army hasn't really gotten into conflict with ours, or into direct contact other than when we have attacked them. And if we can just kind of maintain that going forward, then that would be very helpful. It would really see the cause, well, just moving forward fairly rapidly. So yeah, basically we're just going to march forward. Hopefully they won't manage to occupy much of our land, and we should have a pretty quick going with this. We're not going to add any additional war goals, just the one major one, simply because it is a way of us reducing infamy overall. We are going to try to take at least one more of their states, which would be Sonora. Although right now it is kind of nice having them have access to the United States so they could take over American lands. And we could go take them back from them if we become a great power. So that would be very nice. We'll see how it all actually ends up playing out. They are occupying our territory now, which is a slight inconvenience, and let's not actually get this army caught by the Mexican forces, although it looks like they are trying. At any rate, I don't know if we'll actually have to engage the Mexican forces in order to actually win this war. It looks like we should just be able to keep occupying them, and they aren't managing to get their army together to enough of an extent to really counter us at this point. Although it really does remain to be seen how long that will last, and we could probably pick off 1 or 2 of their armies as they get really just out of position to an extent that's not really justifiable. So that's basically the goal. In fact, we're probably going to go after this 118 stack as soon as we finish the occupation of Mexico City. And we are engaging some of their small individual groups of soldiers that they just kind of put way out of position. And we're kind of just showing them how much of a mistake it is to do that. We're going to not get beer halls since there's really no great reason to do so. And we are getting machine guns, although it is taking a little while. Hopefully we'll be one of the first states to get that tech and get into Africa. We are attacking these Mexican forces, and it's going significantly well. So we should probably just be able to knock that stack entirely out of existence, and we did. And now we can go and follow up and destroy that one other army. And then it's really better for us if we do this than if we just leave their armies in the field. And that's going to be our constant state of affairs against the American army, is to just keep basically just destroying it in its entirety, just so that they never really build up and constantly have to spend money to reconstruct their army rather than just get into a better position over time. Alright, so we do have a peace offer on the table. We are just going to smash this Mexican army before we accept peace, just also to hopefully make sure that their state is even less stable and more likely to just kind of collapse into various wars and things, civil wars mainly. So we'll go ahead and accept that. We will extend slavery there, because of course we will. And there we go, we have kinda nice borders. We're going to eventually kinda mess that up a little bit, but I think it'll be fairly good in the long run. We'll go ahead and demobilize. We don't really have very much in the way of troops, population really, that we can get into our military. So we're going to basically be limited to the forces that we already have, which are kind of undermanned, and the forces that we can just bring up. So it's not entirely an ideal situation. Hopefully once we colonize into Africa, though, that'll be more successful. And hopefully we will get the United States out of the great power status, although they are really heavily clinging on to it. And their military score is higher than ours, which is actually quite concerning. So hopefully nothing too terrible happens. We're going to go to war with them for Kentucky as soon as we're able to, as really the most guaranteed way that we're going to just keep achieving successes against them is to just constantly be attacking. One lesson we've learned from the other version is to just make sure that there are capitalists and we don't have to encourage them, since it seems like we already have enough, for now at least, and we'll bring our forces over just adjacent to Washington, D.C., just so they don't get any ideas. Ultimately, though, it seems like we're in a fairly decent position. As long as we can just maintain our edge over the United States, there's really nothing for us to fear. Although, realistically, they could be... well, it's not something we can take for granted, I'll say. And once we get to a point where we have too much infamy to attack them for a state every few years, then we really are at risk of them eclipsing us militarily. And that would just be absolutely traumatic for us as a nation. Meanwhile, the British really do not want to form an alliance with us. Very low... oh, okay, there we go, we can colonize now. And they really just don't like us politically, and they have too many alliances and things like that, so no real hope of forming an alliance with the British in this campaign. Colonially, we can go ahead and just advance across Africa. So we'll go ahead and just initiate that right now. And let's see, we don't really have any more colonial power. And we don't really need to go after that one area we directly border, since no one actually ever goes for that state, or that region. If we look colonially, another lesson that we had learned is that we don't actually need to go for Gabon. And so by avoiding that, we can go to the Ivory Coast instead. And this way, we still get the entirety of this portion of Africa cut off if we manage to colonize there. So yeah, we'll just do that. That should be decent for now. We might even want to go for Dahomey instead of anywhere else, but we'll avoid that sort of thing for now. And yeah, we'll build up our naval bases even more than they've already been built up. Although it looks like we're already building up almost everywhere that we can. Not entirely, though. And we may end up running out of money by doing this, which is not really the greatest thing, but also not the worst. And we will cut our military funding, since it doesn't seem like there's anything we really need to do with it right now. We do have our tariffs up at a very high level, so we will drop those down considerably. That was basically just wartime levels. And we don't need to just be constantly maintaining that. It would probably be better for our economy if we cut it off entirely, although then that has issues for us building naval bases, but we'll just kind of run the risk of not getting as much of Africa as we need to in exchange for having our economy perform better over the long run. We will go ahead and just go to 5 speeds, since at this point all we're doing is colonizing, which is mostly just hoping for the best and for other countries to be kind of slow to the uptake. And we'll probably become a great power based on just all the colonies we manage to successfully take, provided we don't get cut off in any just absolutely brutal way. And in January 30th, we'll be able to expand our territories into protectorates, or our little colonial endeavors into protectorates. And I'm not actually 100% certain if having armies will actually continue to speed up the rate of colonization. But we will go ahead and attach just a bunch of irregulars and apparently some cannons, and just take all of these groups that weren't really in any armies themselves and just bring them to bear. We are getting some American pan-nationalists, which are people who want us to join the United States again, so that's not ideal. So we will just fund our army a little bit, not too much, since it looks like it isn't the most popular stance that our people could take, and that is very good news. So we'll just roll in and out and just clear them out a bit and bring our forces back to the border against the American capital. Alright, so we'll see if we actually do manage to speed anything up by putting troops in the area. And that would be very cool, in fact. Since that used to be the method that colonization went by in very old Victoria too. So let's see. It doesn't actually look as though it speeds it up. It might only be for when you are competing against another great power. Oh well, at this point at least we know, and that is pretty good information even if it isn't entirely helpful at this point. The French are getting their own colonial endeavors begun, or are beginning their own colonial endeavors. We could cut them off and then just rush over into other areas, and in fact that might be the thing to do. So that'll probably be the next course of action. We can now go ahead and upgrade our colonies, so we'll create all these protectorates. Oops, let's actually select them. And we have to actually zoom into places. That's odd that it's... Alright, there we go. Create protectorate. And create protectorate. So alright, we have a pretty solid presence in Africa. We'll rush over to Volta and also keep cutting off the French right there. We could take Eastern Mali. And let's see. Gabon is probably a good place to go for. We have 160 left. So we can go for the Niger Delta. And also Guinea. So we will go for those. Worst case, we're going to lose Western Mali, but I think we can... Well, we'll definitely be able to take Eastern Mali, and because we're cutting them off in Ghana, we'll be assured Volta. One thing we're not assured is Outer Hossaland, although we should be able to just cut people off from getting a decent amount of access there. So that should all be good. That should all work out fairly well, and we should be upgrading our colonies quickly enough, or our naval bases quickly enough to get a little bit of an extra push, which will probably just make it so that we have constant alerts about areas that we can go. So right now, all these things we are able to build colonies in. That's not really a very helpful notification. But in October, near the end of October, we'll be able to advance even further, and in May, we'll be able to advance there. So we'll actually test this theory of whether or not this actually speeds us up. And we actually have machine gun armaments, which is very nice. Alright, so May 5th right now. But if we move some troops onto it, still May 5th. Or, no, May 2nd. I was reading it backwards. We'll let our people be more liberal. We will invest these 20 colonial power. And alright, July 31st. And without troops, still July 31st. Okay, so they definitely got rid of that. I wasn't entirely sure. Looks like the British are advancing a little bit, but nowhere really noticeable or to any extent that we actually need to worry about. And we just have to wait till October. We are also potentially going to become a great power. Basically, at this point, we will, unless anything crazy or unforeseen happens, which it very well may. And what we're probably going to do is get a bunch of soldiers from... Oh, that's annoying. The Ottomans are still a competent enough power that they're able to colonize, and that means we really should have focused more on places like Ubangani Sari. So yeah, that's unfortunate. We will see what we're able to do, though, later on. Great power contention. We will get Ubangi Saria, try to just rush that. The Ottomans might get up to Wadia. We'll try to cut them off in Equatoria, though. Alright, so what's all of this then? Our independence is gradually being undercut more and more as something that only exists on paper. Great powers are vying for control over our political institutions. Let's look at our sphere of influence map mode. It doesn't really look like anyone's influencing us too terribly. Yeah. Alright. So they'll either assert themselves or lose influence. That's probably where they have to take 1 infamy or lose a decent amount, or lose 5 prestige. So we'll see how that goes. It doesn't really affect us in any terrible way at the moment, but I guess it does have the opportunity to turn somewhat less than spectacular. Also, since our naval bases have upgraded somewhat, you'll notice that we did get a lot of extra points, and that's how we were able to colonize forward even that small amount that we did. We'll go ahead and detach these two groups of irregulars, although realistically we should probably be detaching all of our irregulars and turning them into regular infantry. Except for, of course, the groups that are just completely undermanned to the extent that they're not really anything. So yeah, we'll actually just disband those two groups. And what can we actually produce? We'll get a group of dragoons, an artillery, and an infantry. Just some simple stuff. And our units are all currently set to rally over by Mexico, which made sense during the Mexican War. We'll rally them back over at Charlotte. And it looks like we've really been encouraging bureaucrats, which has been a terrible mistake at this point. Just because I kind of stopped looking at it, and all of our all of our national foci are actually way over the top at this point. So we'll go ahead and just encourage clerks in Alabama, and let's go ahead and encourage craftsmen in Georgia and Missouri. Let's double check. Georgia has enough, and Missouri has enough, so that should help us out. That'll get our economy going pretty well. We are losing in Ghana, although we're not really trying to win in Ghana. We're just trying to hold the French off for a little bit. Italians have declared war on the Papal States, which means they're at war with France as well, which will hopefully get their attention slightly away. We will go ahead and upgrade that just the once, though, just to be sure that they can't really affect us. They are also taking North Angola, but that doesn't really matter. I'd rather they take that place than anywhere that's actually relevant. So in a way, that's all working out in our favor. And then we'll just have to be ready on the 29th, which is coming up rapidly. It says we're able to invest somewhere. Oh, okay, it looks like they are actually starting to affect us. They're trying to contest us for Ghana, or Guyana, which is a little annoying, and we're not going to win it, more likely than not. Alright, on the bright side though, we are able to advance. Alright, so we're getting a good clip, or a good portion of Africa. We will go ahead and take western Mali and outer Hossaland. We can probably just slow the French down right there, and maybe even go for Mauritania, although it looks like we don't have any naval bases close enough. We do have a naval base right there, which you would think would be enough, but I guess evidently not. No, it says that we could. What's the deal with that, I wonder? Huh. That is pretty odd. You would think that we would be able to. Alright, at any rate, we'll also keep expanding down south into Africa, down in this direction, just to try to get as much of this area as possible. The Portuguese are not a secondary power, so that is very good news, although the British will probably start rolling up from the south. So, yeah, that should work out decently well. Ideally, we'll be able to colonize around Sokoto. This colony should be the next one ready in April. And then we'll just have to worry about July. And also maintaining our forces, or our presence right there. We will withdraw, although we don't really get anything for withdrawing. It's not really bad for us either. And we can invest right there, so we'll do that. Portugal wants to ally us, which is something we could do, although not really necessarily something we need to or really should do, as I don't really believe the Portuguese can offer us all that much at this current moment. We will get education efficiency, and then we'll just work through our military techs again, as we are going to need to stay very much atop military technology if we're going to survive as a state. Alright, so we have until April 9th. April 9th and then through July. So that's a few months. We can go ahead and look away from there. The Ottomans have advanced, and they are contesting us right there. I do believe the Ottomans are a great power that we could actively contest for territory in Africa. We're going to move from there and then contest them in Darfur. We are a great power now, which is very cool. I'm decently upset with their presence in Outer Hossaland, so we are going to have to rush into places like North Cameroon. which we will rush into right now. And then we'll go into Bornu, although we won't need to hurry for that as we will surround it. Although we may need to do a little bit of an effort in Wadai. But as soon as we can advance out of Western Mali, we should be fine. Luckily, the Spanish are contesting the French over there, so that's very good news. And we will contest the French in Guyana just for the moment. And not to fall behind on this, we do have a truce only until February of 1874, and then we're going to have to worry about the United States again. So we're probably going to just justify another acquire state casus belli and move forward from there. It looks like we don't actually have the colonial power to start a new protectorate or the efforts to begin a new protectorate just yet. And that's a little worrying. We can invest in May 8th, so we'll have to be sure to do that. And then once we get Western Mali, we should be fine. I would like to colonize further and actually get Mauritania, and then we could maybe even go for this area, but that's really not a priority at the moment. The priority is going to be securing a land connection from one side of our African holdings to the other. And we can also probably start influencing some of these American states, or these states within the Americas. So we'll start with Colombia. Alright, it looks like we are able to spend more colonial power right now. So let's go ahead and begin with that. We will go ahead and just begin creating a protectorate in Equatoria, and then we'll go rush over to cut them off in Darfur. Oh, we'll actually need to contest them in Wadi as well, if we're going to get a direct land connection. So that's a little troublesome. We'll see how it goes. We're losing in Guyana, that's just something that's going to happen. Alright, so this should be ready to go fairly soon. We'll get those two. When is this ready? In November. Alright, so we'll get 2 new protectorates, and then we can evacuate out of Guyana. Alright, so at this point it's probably a good idea to go into Heroland. And now we either have the choice of grabbing more lands or contesting these Ottoman pushes. So we will contest Darfur. We'll fall back right there. And soon we'll be able to invest again. Alright, I'm not sure how much effort they will be able to put in to contest us generally. And we have until April for more of these efforts. And by then we're going to have to also be working on limiting the power of the Americans. Oh wow, it looks like the Ottomans are just getting overwhelmed, so hopefully they will stop being a secondary power fairly soon. You'd think their prestige would have to drop. And it looks like there's going to be a big crisis war between the North Germans and the Austrians over the rights of, I suppose, the Romanians. So that could very well be interesting. We'll see how that all plays out. Once again, April, let's see, February, and November. So it's all getting pretty scattered right now, which isn't optimal. And hopefully they do just kind of collapse from great power status. In fact, you would think that as they're being occupied out, they would lose colonial power and be forced to evacuate. Or just withdraw their claims in a few of these areas. That remains to be seen, however. Oh, and they managed to get that area. So we're going to have to invade Sokoto if we actually want to achieve anything. Although they aren't really being actively influenced by anybody just yet. Maybe a little bit, but not really to an extent that matters. Alright, so we'll just kind of keep on keeping on as it is, as it were. Go ahead and keep pressing our influence against the Ottomans, and hope that they just kind of collapse as a significant power in the world. It is unfortunate that they've cut us off, but we'll just have to be better than them in the long run. And hopefully we'll be able to cut the British off. I'm not entirely sure we can bank on that. It doesn't look as though they're actually actively colonizing in most areas, although they have begun. So it is possible that they could start colonizing Botswana, in which case they would potentially be able to cut us off, so we might want to go for Zambia right now. We are contesting basically everyone else everywhere else that matters, although we do need to rush over to Somaliland in order to seal off that area, as that is also a route that they could come by to start limiting our influence and blocking us off. At this rate, though, we will go ahead and rush Mauritania, just since it seems something that we should be able to pull off. And other than that, we just have a little bit of a waiting game, and I'm going to hope really just a lot that we can get into Botswana before the British do. Now, that may be a little overly optimistic, but we'll just have to see how it plays out. We do have biologism, so we'll go ahead and get steel breech-loaded artillery and just kind of focus on the military route from here on out, at least until the next war with the United States, which should hopefully bring them down a peg or two. Although their army is larger than our own, so we are really going to have to be tactical about this if we're going to make any sort of headway against them in the coming war. And a war is almost certainly to come. Let's see, we can build a lot of infantry in Africa. We'll build a couple dragoons and a couple artillery, and then just the rest infantry. And we will try to get them all to meet up. See, that's the inconvenience about not having a direct land route, is we'll have to create two colonial rally points, one in Monrovia and the other just over here in Cameroon, where we should probably build a naval base up. And that'll be our center for naval power in the region. Alright, and pretty soon we'll get Equatoria, and then we can just rush over, probably to Rift Valley, and then from there to Kenya. So that should be at least effective enough. Our infamy is down to a decently low clip. And we have until February 17th, which is also somewhat around the time we will be able to invest in this. Alright, so we'll justify this. We'll try to take over Kentucky in this war, and then we'll go for West Virginia in the next. And we'll just hope for success. Unfortunately, we're not even able to offer to form an alliance with the British because of the ongoing crisis, which we should look at. North Germany and... oh, okay, so it would be for Hungarian independence against Austria, and no one is supporting either side. Spain wants to support North Germany, so that would actually be really devastating to the Austrians, so we kind of have to hope that they succeed. Not for any real reason, just it would really change the balance of power in the game. And that's always an interesting thing. Leads to more interesting circumstances, I guess we could say. The Ottomans are maintaining a kind of shocking degree of competence, despite the fact that they're really just being heavily occupied. So hopefully that eventually just tears them apart a little, but it doesn't really seem like it's going to in the very near future. Also, we got a considerable amount of infamy from our justification against the United States, which, while not unexpected, is certainly not ideal. And let's see, we still have around 280 days, so we don't need to do anything else militarily or anything super drastic just yet. We will bring our navy over into Africa just so we can pluck up our forces. And it looks like we'll see if Hungary gets their independence or not. And it's North Germany, which has 102 brigades, against Austria with 99, and Spain with 49. I'm not sure how effective they'll be, but it looks like the advantage is towards North Germany right now. So that would definitely be an interesting outcome. Oh, we can also go ahead and create our protectorate right there, and we'll rush into Botswana, although now we are at 0. The USA has declared war upon us. That is not great. Also, probably something we should have anticipated a little bit more. We'll go ahead and mobilize. Are we still going to get our war justification? Yes, okay, so we will be able to add a war goal against them at least. Alright, so we'll rush our forces over. We are not super well organized at this moment, which is a pretty big shame. Although we should be able to just push into Washington and overwhelm their forces. It looks like they'll even attack us, which is good news. We'll get that defender's advantage. So they're taking -2 due to that. They are mobilizing, which is to be anticipated. And we'll just try to destroy that one American force before anything else can really happen. They are taking over Missouri. What is their war goal? American liberation of Missouri. Okay, that's understandable. Looks like they're fleeing to Washington. We'll leave this group of irregulars where they've been. We also get the defender's advantage just because we were quicker than them, which is very lucky. It's a good place to be. It should just destroy that one American military. Alright, so not the worst situation, although obviously it's not proceeding optimally. Cut down to size against Uruguay, not that we're actually going to do that. And we are causing some significant harm to their military, so that is good, somewhat. Well, it's just straight up good. When do we need to worry about our colonies again? Not until August. We need to worry about them right now in these areas. Alright, let's see, January, August, and November. So really August is the main one. We need to keep contesting over here in Outer Hostile Land, since that's the one we actually want, and we will just keep contesting them generally. Hopefully they lose a decent amount of prestige given their considerable state of war and just occupation and general awfulness going on in their country. Speaking of general awfulness going on in their country, American pan-nationalists have just risen in one of our states, though not to any real considerable degree, and will bring our forces forward. It looks like we managed to just obliterate that one force, so that is very good news. We'll pull back the majority of our forces and try to just smash these armies before they're able to really organize. It looks like they are fully prepped groups, which means that they are almost certainly nothing but mobilized people, so we'll just try to cut them off from the rest of the American military force. Those groups which are not organized are actual army units, that's how you can tell. Alright, let's see. On the bright side, we have a large amount of legitimacy to our claim that they are out to get us, since they are actively at war with us, and we need to rush up reinforcements because it looks like we're going to have a few pretty awful battles going on in just a moment or two. We should be able to take over Harrisonburg and then move forward. And we have until August before we need to worry about our colonies again. We have to remember that. We have until August. Alright, so we pushed them back. We could commit very hard to defeating that one force, but we're not going to do that. Looks like some peace deal was made. It looks like Romania lost a little bit of their land, which actually knocked the Ottomans out of secondary power status. I'm not sure how long it'll take. They are just a civilized nation, so hopefully we'll get these colonies. Alright, and we don't have to worry about our colonial adventurism until August 9th. Alright, so back into the American wars. It looks like we're going to win that battle, so we will just go chase down this one American army group. We've absolutely wrecked that force, which is great news. We can't just leave everybody behind. And they're going to Baltimore, so we will go match them. Alliance offer from Venezuela, we'll go ahead and accept that. We will increase the opinion Colombia has of us, and we'll also start working to influence Venezuela, since it does seem as though they want to at least be some level of friends with us, some level of friendly. Alright, we managed to smash those American armies, so we'll now go try to reunite our forces. We did win there as well, so that's very good news. We'll go push back to Washington. It looks like they're going to try some sort of defensive engagement. We are losing some of our territories, which isn't ideal. We can go ahead and create this protectorate. Oops, create protectorate. We don't really need to move into Inner Mauritania, although we are attempting to. And nowhere else really is all that important. Hopefully fairly soon the Ottomans will be kicked out of their colonial endeavors. We apparently are going in some very odd direction, which isn't optimal. We will pull half of our army away and just go reinforce this group. We've won the Battle of Washington. That's great news. They're going to Harrisburg, where they will be met by more of our forces. Once they manage to win that battle, we'll regroup with that 27 stack. Or we'll just reinforce with that 27 stack, and we'll move these troops here so these guys can go into our own country and reinforce. Let's see. They have a few troops going to Dover, which we probably should intercept. We'll just send this army out. Alright, so it looks like it's going somewhat well. Actually, it's going very well. That's good news. Over to Scranton. What are people not like state capitalism? Good old Scranton, I believe that's where the office takes place. Not that that's particularly relevant. And hopefully the Ottomans will be kicked out fairly soon, although we can't really guarantee that. And I believe this was the next place at November, and it is, okay. And then January. And then May. Okay, so we got all of that basically settled. The American military is not really performing very well against us, so that is great news. Philadelphia, we should be able to defeat their forces there. These units are ready to go. We'll just get them back into the fight. And we should be building up our forces to counteract their invasion. Sweden declared war on Russia, which is kind of interesting. I don't imagine that'll go very well for them. Back to our own countryside, they are bringing a considerable force to bear. It looks like we have destroyed those American armies, though. We'll bring our forces back, and we'll rush these armies down. We might take a little bit of attrition right then. We don't actually have enough troops super together right now, so we'll pull back a bit. And this army is going to be of considerable concern. Can we get these troops out of here on time? Maybe not. Well, that's alright. We'll just rush all of these other troops to their aid. Alright, we should be able to handle this. Definitely get more pro-military. And where are they going? Hagerstown. We'll just meet them with the entirety of our military. And let's see. 68 days until we can just add a war goal. So we won't rush anything too much. Let's see, can we pull these forces away? We lost significantly more forces than they did, which is obviously not optimal. And I'll just try to loop around them a little. The one thing that we really need to concern ourselves with is that they don't manage to make it into the mountains, so we will try to cut them off from the mountains right now. And it looks like we just managed to defeat them entirely, so that's good. And we'll just kind of spread out a little bit. They are still occupying our territory. We can create a protectorate. It's already December, so we kind of slacked a little on that field, or on that front. Looks like we did cut them off from going further into Africa, so that's good. We will go after Kenya, though. And then we have until January before we need to worry too much. Now, the Ottomans shouldn't actually be capable of sustaining any colonial efforts. I'm not entirely sure how they're pulling it off at the moment. Oh, well, at any rate, this is going very well for us. At least it is now. So that's very good. Let's see. We don't have any cores on their lands, so that's kind of annoying, but we will be able to go take over Kentucky in this war once we get this war goal justified. That shouldn't be too long. So that's all good news. Mexico even declared war on the United States, which is part of the reason we went after Nuevo Leon instead of Sonora, was so they could just rush on in and help us in our wars. Alright. So this is actually going fairly well, although it was kind of concerning that they were confident enough in their abilities to invade us that they would actually declare war themselves. So we'll go ahead and add war goal, acquire state. We will acquire Kentucky if we can find it. There we go. 27 war score. Should be something we already have. And we really need to go rush in and smash up their military. If we're lucky, they'll also have... Oh, they already have some reactionary rebels, but not so much. We can create a colony in Botswana, which is good. There we go. Now we've sealed off that portion of Africa. And once we get enough colonial power, we can move forward even further. And when do we have to worry about things next? May, and also September. Alright, so we have some time. We'll go smash that one American army just because we don't really want them to have any army whatsoever at the end of this. Hopefully to the extent that Mexico is able to just overwhelm them. That would be pretty cool for us. We'll wait until all of our armies are together, and it doesn't seem like they're really offering us our terms at the moment anyway, so we'll wait until we can just kind of ram through them. Oh, they probably were just offering us our terms right now, but we'll just destroy that force really quickly. And we'll just make sure that it's absolutely eradicated. There we go. Give us Kentucky, extend some slavery up to Kentucky. And there we go, now we just need West Virginia, and it looks like they haven't bothered to revoke slavery themselves, so that's kind of cool for us. We're going to have some slave states with some slaves, and that's basically what we're looking for as the Confederate States of America. Plus they have reactionaries, which are just kind of going about. Maybe they'll get even more and have a revolution, and that would just help us out immensely. Maybe that isn't something we should actively be expecting, and in fact I'd go so far as to say we definitely shouldn't be actively expecting that. We'll get investment banks just for our tax efficiency, and then we'll worry more about our military later on. We don't really have to worry about it right now since we've proven that we are able to achieve resounding victories. We'll go ahead and give our people a little bit of pensions just because we may as well. And we'll just keep... Oh, what is this? France managed to influence Colombia enough to get the Panama Canal, which is something that we would have loved to have, although it's obviously not a tremendous necessity. And tonight we're going to have a very large section of Africa. An alliance offer from Portugal, who we turned down previous, and are probably going to still not accept. Alright, so we can create a protectorate. Where is that? Over here. Alright. Get that set up. Try to kick the Ottomans out of these territories once and for all. And then we'll move on. And we might be able to go rush into this portion of Africa, and that would be somewhat nice. And we have to wait until August anyway. And then we don't even really have the power. It looks like the French are contesting us there, so we're just going to fall back, since we weren't really going to win that anyway. The important thing is that this whole clump of Africa is ours and ours alone, unless someone else takes over Zanzibar, which they may do. Alright, other than that, we're not really working on anything. So we'll just kind of wait, kick back, hope for the best. Create that protectorate. And I don't believe they're actually capable of investing anymore at this point. So we'll just go for this one remaining area that's up for grabs, and we'll save our points until November when we can go and just kick them out of Outer Hausaland. Alliance offer from Brazil, we will go ahead and accept that. And we will just become the protector of all of the Latin American states other than Mexico, which we're going to just kind of attempt to devour. Let's go ahead and drop our land spending and our naval spending. We'll use these surpluses to drop our taxes on the middle class, and we will increase our military funding to 100% just because I think we'll need it in the long run. And then once November comes, we'll get that, and then we'll just work on all the portions of Africa that are basically dedicated to being ours at this point. We could also take over Nigeria, that way our portions of Africa will connect, and it looks like we're being contested by the Spaniards, although I do believe we'll be able to contest that. Although I'm kind of just making that up. Spain probably has a decent colonial empire, although they are also battling the French, and they're not going to win that, I don't assume. Alright, we have a protectorate right there, so that's pretty cool. Go ahead and invest in Timbuktu, and we'll just go ahead and make sure that we can just take over all of these bordering areas, just so that no one slips through the cracks. Not that I think it's possible that they could, but we're just going to guarantee that no one can. We'll also take Bornu. And let's see, no one really has much influence over Sokoto right now. We could just go ahead and justify a demand concession war, So we're going to do that, and that'll connect our African portions, although it does risk a little bit more infamy than I would like. And doing anything like that also lowers our colonial points, so it might be better off if we don't do this just yet. What we will do also to sort of compensate is we'll build some ironclads and a few monitors. And I'll just double up the... no, we'll just build one of each. We may build other units in the future, just not so much right now. And we should also probably boat some forces over. It looks like we're getting tons of railroads constructed, so we'll just turn off those notifications. And I do believe we have a large enough military to contest Sokoto directly right now in Africa. Although we don't really want to risk anything if we don't need to, so we will go ship more forces over just to be absolutely safe. And I'll just bring this force over. Well, actually, we'll bring the largest force we've got, even though it is entirely undermanned brigades. And that's obviously very far from the optimal situation. The North Germans want to ally us. We'll go ahead and say yes to that. It looks as though they lost their war in order to free Hungary, and that's kind of a bummer. We only had 2 infamy we only took 2 infamy for our demands against Sokoto, which isn't terrible. We'll probably just take over Sokoto, North Cameroon, just because we don't really need to take anything else, and meh, it'll just be quick and easy. Although it is getting slowed down somewhat, we should probably go ahead and let's see, we'll move these forces over. If we could just select the Navy. Come on. Alright, we'll bring them over. And let's see, how long are we away? We are basically already there, so we'll just start increasing our military budget. We're losing the race in Timbuktu, which means we can probably go create a colony somewhere. It doesn't actually look like it. We'll just increase their investment. And they actually have a considerably large military, although I don't believe it'll matter. We have a ton of dragoons, which isn't really optimal. But I imagine we'll be able to take Sokoto, North Cameroon without really much of a fight, since it's only 3 war score. Alright, and now we can make more colonies and various things. We're not really going to right now, although we'll probably start in a moment, just so we don't have to keep thinking about this. Looks like they are actually attacking us, which is a little bolder than I thought they would be, but we'll see if we can just roll on through, even though we're not really the most organized. And it looks like we will be able to make that work, although we might lose a few units. Alright, we made it work, and that's pretty great news. Our economy is also taking off, at least somewhat. We'll get prestige bonuses and then rush into social science. And we're going to lose probably a few of these forces. It looks like the Spanish are still contesting the French, so that is good news for us. Hopefully they don't actually win outright. That would be pretty bad, as then they would just have all those resources to bring to bear. So Sokoto did manage to win that occupation, or complete that occupation, however you want to phrase it. And we can create just a ton of colonies. It looks like right now we're able to go ahead and create some of these protectorates. Obviously not right there though. And they are willing to piece us out, so we'll go ahead and just accept. Alright, so now there's just one large combined Confederate Africa. We'll keep bludgeoning Sokoto over time. Right now though, we don't really have anything to worry about. We should actually probably save our colonial points so we can win that colonial race. And we'll just ensure that we're able to take over all of these areas. Alright, next stop is going to be this battle against the Spanish, and that'll just be in October. The USA is trying to take over Sonora. That is a tremendous pain, although I guess not really unexpected. Alright, so that's a little problematic. The United States is going to rush down there, and that'll just be annoying for us to deal with, and we'll have to attack them again once more. So we are going to have a long history of just fighting the United States, especially if we want a Pacific coast, and we kind of do. So what do? Well, there's not all that much we can do. It looks like American reactionaries are taking over at least one of their provinces. Maybe they'll push over to Washington with the American armies focused against Mexico, although I don't know if we can actually hope for all that much. We'll keep battling the Spanish. And we don't have to worry about that until February. Or about those until May. Alright, so overall, pretty decent spot. Our soldiers from Africa should help us stay in the game, more or less. Oh, and we're getting quite a bit of colonial power by all of our new naval vessels. So we'll go ahead and just push into other areas that we can just take over. And we'll hope for the best with all of that. The United States is the 5th great power in the world, which is terribly concerning. And they're definitely performing better than Mexico is. And we'll just keep this up. Unfortunately, Spain did win that colonial battle, more or less. So it's kind of up in the air if we'll be able to defeat them in Timbuktu. But we will hope for that. I mean, obviously we're going to hope for it. We may have to stop taking over all of these protectorates. Although I don't think that'll be the biggest issue. We could probably actually maintain a decent level of investment in multiple areas and not have it fail too far. Brazil and Venezuela we can influence, so we'll go ahead and do that. And definitely keep aligning ourselves as the natural defender of the Latin American world, other than Mexico. Oh, the UK declared war on Sokoto. What are they after? They're probably going to establish a protectorate. Oh, yes, they are. Alright, so that's a little inconvenient, but we did manage to get a little bit of a direct land connection. And let's see, we can create these protectorates right now. We'll go ahead and do that. This one won't be ready until October. Alright, and we will just maintain. Alright, so we're doing very well in this scramble for Africa, much better than we really had any right to anticipate. And we are friendly with Brazil. So this is all working out very well. And we can create tons and tons of colonies, which we are absolutely not going to do. So we are kind of playing with fire by not, well, by not just occupying the United States outright. Once we take over West Virginia, we'll really have taken all that we can really legitimately ask for as legitimate Confederate territories. Other than, I suppose, Maryland, since it does have a considerable Dixie population. So we might actually keep pressing over we'd be able to take over Maryland, but not the District of Columbia. But that would honestly make our borders look just absolutely atrocious, so I'm not really looking too much to do that. Alright, where else can we colonize? That is in October, which is coming up relatively quickly. So yeah, I actually didn't expect us to get this much of Africa, so that is a really good thing for our just ability to move forward throughout this campaign. And it definitely is a way that we are going to overperform compared to the absolutely most moral version of our Confederate States of America. And it remains to be seen how well the more outright villainous Confederacy is going to do. Looks like we have some anarcho-liberals rising up in Mexico, and I don't believe these American rebels are going to win now. In fact, they're being counter-occupied. So it's basically the end of that. And our North German allies, of course, are not going to be any help to us if the United States declares war. And realistically, we never could have anticipated that they would. The ideal ally would have been the United Kingdom, however, they have not decided that they want to ally us. And that's really an area where we're going to have a tremendous amount of difficulty, unless we can just, outperform the United States. And they are having a bunch of rebels, or rebellions, just generally, so that is kind of good news. And they haven't reformed away from slavery, So who really knows what they're doing? In fact, they made Sonora a slave state. So that's pretty weird. At any rate, it's not really that much of an issue. We can create a protectorate, so we'll go ahead and do that. And we can invest more. They are putting quite a few colonial points into that, which is a little concerning. So we might in fact need to build up our navy a little bit more. Let's see, what's giving us naval power? Or a colonial power? I'm not entirely sure if ironclads or monitors provide more colonial power. And I'm not entirely sure how we would figure that out. We will get social science though. Looks like the UK did annex Sokoto, so we really did set them up to be able to do that, which is a little unfortunate. And then we're just going to have to maintain against the Spanish. And when will this be ready? In July 9th. So we're not going to be ready quite in time. And that is a little unfortunate, honestly. But not so much so that we really need to be concerned. Oh, and we can get another national focus, so we will go ahead and create that. Alright, and then we just have to wait until March of 1880, and then we can start fabricating another casus belli against the United States. And we are definitely going to have to do that, otherwise we will most certainly be at risk of them just declaring war on us and us not being able to get anything from them. We'll go ahead and let our people become more socialist, as we do want to pass some socialist reforms. Ooh, and it looks like we don't even have enough colonial power to stay in the game right now, although our navy should be expanding slowly but surely over time, and we are getting another naval base. Alright, well, there are some levels of this that are just not going too optimally. It would also have been ideal if we could have taken over Sokoto, as they did have quite a few soldier pops, and it looks as though we are just number 8 in great powers right now, and that is unfortunate, though we did manage to get back up to number 7 fairly expediently. We might have to ban slavery simply so that we'll have a larger pool of people that we could recruit from, a larger population to recruit from, since obviously slaves could not be soldiers, just sensibly. Alright, we will also detach, I guess, just one of these irregulars and a dragoon, since we don't really need that many forces there, and we will bring these guys back over into our homeland, although we do have a few years before we really need to worry about more American interventionism. How is our navy production coming along? 35 days and we should be able to build up. Oh, it looks as though the Spanish actually won before we were able to do anything. Alright, well, that's not ideal. However, we can just go ahead and focus our colonial efforts into just the rest of Africa, which we have a fairly solid grasp of. We're probably not going to press over into Etria just yet, although I don't believe the AI will ever actually go for those sorts of things. And we will just go ahead and create colonies. We'll see if that actually has any positive influence on our economy or what the actual purpose of this is. I couldn't honestly tell you. I'm not really sure why we have to just select these things. Although you'll notice we have quite a few slaves just throughout Africa, which is a little, well, I mean, I guess Africa just had slaves at this point in history. And so do we. Alright, and just like that, we don't really have to worry about our colonies until they come up, and even then we just have all of this tremendous amount of Africa to go ahead and slowly take over. Now we're going to be getting naval power just as the days go on, so we'll use that to invest in colonies, and it doesn't really look as though our navy or our economy is getting any better by doing this. So who's really to say what the actual purpose is? In a way, I suppose it doesn't really matter. Alright, so Brazil and Venezuela will keep influencing. We can add Brazil to our sphere of influence. That's pretty cool. Venezuela, we can do the same. And now with that all done, we can probably... We're not going to really deal with Mexico since they were just going to hate us for the rest of time. We will go ahead and influence Peru, though. Maybe Ecuador. Well, we will influence Ecuador. And if you take a look at our sphere of influence, it looks like the United States managed to get Colombia, which is kind of annoying. Hopefully, though, we'll be able to turn this whole thing around over time. Mexican reactionaries, so they are now a presidential dictatorship. And at this point, we should probably be calling it, since we are an hour in. Our pragmatic approach at Confederate history is going decently well, I would say. We are facing an ever stronger United States, and our allies are not really the ideal allies we would seek out for this sort of thing. And both of those are issues. Really just remains to be seen how everything plays out if the United States, which has an army slightly smaller than ours, if they'll be able to recover in between wars. And really a big concern would be if our infamy limit, or if we go above our infamy limit, trying to fabricate a casus belli on them, which would be just absolutely game breaking for us. So we're going to have to be very cautious. In fact, we probably won't be able to fabricate a claim on them, so they'll probably declare war on us before we're able to. And that really could, well, that would just be a very large detriment to us. So we might have to take a 5-year gap, but if that does happen, we'll just smash their army as well as we can, and just hope for a better future. But you're really probably noticing a cycle at this point, which is every 5 years they're going to try to attack us, and every 5 years we're going to have to put up some sort of defense, ideally one which pushes our frontiers further into, well, further north, I suppose. And once we take West Virginia, that's really all that we need. Probably not going to go after Maryland just because of how awful it'll make the borders look, because they will be able to keep Washington, or the District of Columbia, and we would never actually be able to take that from them until we were at a position to annex them. And that just seems like a little bit too much. Although the conquest of Sonora and maybe the western states would be nice, I'm not really sure how realistic that is. We'll just have to wait and see, honestly. So thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. We're doing very well. We are a great power. We'll see how well the other versions of the Confederacy stack up as we progress.